One detail has been coming up for almost 20 years because it shows far more than it first seems to. Sarah Ferguson apparently refrained from referring to Royal Lodge as her home while discussing the property in public, despite having lived there for about 18 years. Rather, she said it would be arrogant to claim it as such. That one-word choice is intriguing. Even after spending 18 years in one location, a remarkable amount of time, there appeared to be a purposeful reluctance to take full responsibility for the arrangement. The Royal Lodge is much more than just a place to live. Situated within the Windsor grounds, this expansive 30-room estate holds great royal significance and history spanning generations. Sarah's life mostly transpired there from 2008 till earlier this year. She didn't have a formal claim to it. More than 10 years after their divorce, Prince Andrew allegedly extended an offer to rejoin, resulting in one of the most peculiar living arrangements in contemporary royal history. Sarah seemed to be admitting an unpleasant truth by characterizing her role as something less than ownership. She occupied the area, but in the end, it belonged to someone else. She was present, but she was never quite at ease in her position. When combined with tales of what it was really like to live inside Royal Lodge, that viewpoint becomes even more intriguing. The couple developed a public persona that frequently prompted people to characterize them as the happiest divorced couple possible. However, accounts from those with first-hand knowledge of the incident present a very different image. They apparently lived in separate apartments at opposite sides of the massive house rather than enjoying a traditional domestic life. They reportedly had few encounters, mostly consisting of phone calls and sporadic chats rather than regular company. One explanation put forth by onlookers is especially illuminating. This perspective holds that Andrew served more as a doorway than as a conventional companion in Sarah's life. Access that would have been challenging to maintain was made possible by his name, music, prestige, address, and ongoing ties to royal circles. Therefore, it's possible that the agreement was more about mutual utility than emotional intimacy. This divergence is important because it alters our understanding of the relationship as a whole. The public narrative starts to look very different if Royal Lodge was more of a strategic arrangement than a love or familial bond. Warmth and long-lasting love are transformed into something completely else. Sarah continued to have access to social opportunities, powerful networks, and royal status. The semblance of a functional family setting and the presence of someone who might infuse warmth and activity into what would otherwise have been a solitary existence helped Andrew in turn. It seems that both parties have benefited from the agreement. They may not have won what the public was led to believe they did, though. The alleged reality of separate rooms and little interaction contrasts sharply with the well-kept public image. Those two versions of the narrative coexisted for years without much attention. The idea that the practical basis supporting this arrangement may now have completely disintegrated is what makes recent reports especially noteworthy. Those who have kept a close eye on the issue contend that the relationship has reached a stage where its benefits are no longer greater than its drawbacks. Not romantically, but in the practical sense that made it possible for it to go on for so long. Sarah's growing perception that her ongoing relationship with Andrew is detrimental to her future opportunities is one particularly noteworthy allegation. In certain cases, the wording is revealing. The discussion focuses on branding, potential, and reputation rather than personal disappointment or emotional distress. These are terms used in business. They suggest a calculation that is more concerned with business viability and public impression than with love or loyalty. If true, that alteration implies a significant shift in the way she now assesses a relationship that seemed impenetrable. In retrospect, it is hard to overlook the timing of this seeming shift. Sarah publicly supported Andrew during some of the most trying times in his public life for many years. During controversies that attracted a lot of media attention, she supported him. Even when official institutions seemed more and more willing to distance themselves from him, she's still talking positively about him. Events that many thought would put an end to the living arrangement at Royal Lodge did not. Eventually, though, something changed. The tone changed once more documents were made public scrutiny increased, royal powers were revoked, and a number of worsening repercussions followed. Declarations of public support became conspicuously lacking. The once consistent vocal loyalty seems to vanish. One of the most fascinating unsolved concerns is whether such silence represents a purposeful choice or a sincere re-evaluation. Because it directly addresses the essence of the connection itself, the distinction is important. The abrupt quiet indicates that a breaking point was eventually reached if the allegiance was genuine and long-lasting. However, if there was always a strategic component to the allegiance, then maybe the quiet is just a new tactic in place of an old one. Predictions that Sarah and Andrew would eventually wind up living in completely separate nations make that idea even more intriguing. While Sarah creates a separate life elsewhere in Europe, some observers imagine Andrew spending long stretches of time overseas. That seems like a definitive conclusion on paper. However, Sarah's past indicates that she seldom adheres to simple storylines. She has frequently made reappearances during her public life, following times when many thought she had been permanently sidelined. She has often succeeded in redefining her public persona and re-entering discussions from which she appeared to be excluded. Her current circumstances are especially interesting because of that tendency. According to the most recent verified reports, she was at a posh spa center in Austria, a location that draws wealthy visitors looking for seclusion and luxury. The location selection is illuminating. Even after years of financial difficulties and frequent conversations about economic strains, settings linked to exclusivity and comfort nevertheless accompany times of crisis. Relocating to upscale environments is a better way to deal with adversity than retreating into humble situations. There are clear questions raised by that consistency. Resources are needed to keep such locations accessible. It implies that there is still some kind of support system in existence in spite of the public debate about money. It's still unclear exactly what kind of help she received, and few individuals in her social circles seem eager to talk about it in public. From a wider angle, Royal Lodge was much more than just a place to live. It was the main tenet of Sarah's post-royal identity. Within the royal landscape, the property offered a permanent address. It maintained her ties to the organization both literally and figuratively. A large portion of the framework vanishes without it. Other members of the royal family own other residences. Her status has been steadily undermined by the systems that formerly supported it. Crown Estate now has authority over Royal Lodge. Andrew's personal situation has drastically changed. It seems like the infrastructure that quietly supported a very particular way of living for many years has been gradually taken away. What's left is far less certain. It's possible that this story's fascinating quality stems from this uncertainty. Over the years, Sarah used 3 words: compromise, communication, and compassion to describe why her unusual arrangement with Andrew was successful. It was a sophisticated response, refined by practice and ideal for an interview. Harmony, mutual respect, and understanding were all implied by the statement. However, those 3 phrases start to feel more convoluted when recent reports depict 2 people living at opposite ends of a large property, interacting infrequently and leading essentially different lives. Did they accurately capture what kept the relationship going for so long? Or were they just the public translation of the story that worked best? That debate persists because it is getting harder to overlook the discrepancy between the reported truth and the public narrative. The actual nature of what was inside Royal Lodge may turn out to be significantly more complicated than the meticulously constructed image that has been put forward for almost 20 years as new information becomes available and outdated arrangements disappear.